Hi guys. All right, so the last time we read, Michael had just broken into the academy and went down into the lower floors and found Taylor. He broke into the room and saw her lying there. So let's see what happens next. Chapter 38, Michael's induction. Taylor was barely able to move. I knelt down on the floor next to her. What have they done to you? She started crying. I'm so sorry I led them to you. I put my hand on her shoulder. It's going to be okay, Taylor. We're going to get you out of here. Have you seen my mother? No, but they told me they have her. Did they say where? Austin asked. No. Taylor, what kind of school is this? It's not a school, it's a laboratory. A laboratory? For what? Another voice came from the darkness. To learn how to make more of us. I spun around to see a young man standing on the other side of the cell. He looked about my age, but was a full 6 inches taller. He was African American and glowing. Standing behind him were two teenage girls, one Chinese and the other a tall blonde, who were both glowing as well. I'm not surprised that I hadn't seen them, as they were in the opposite corner of the cell, and I was only focused on Taylor. I'm Ian, the boy said. I've been watching you and your friends since you arrived this morning. From down here? I see through electrolocation. I can see through the walls. Like electric eels? Austin said. That's cool. Why are you down here? I asked. Around here, you either do what Hatch says or you end up in the dungeon. The two girls walked towards us. The Chinese girl said, I'm McKenna, and I'm Abigail. I'm Michael, I said. Do you also have powers? McKenna nodded. I can make light and heat. Abigail can take away pain. Electric nerve stimulation, Austin said. Very interesting. I turned back to Ian. Do you know who else is down here? I can see everyone in the building, he said. Do you know if my mother is here? They kidnapped her. How long ago did they take her? Just a few days ago. Ian shook his head. The only female prisoners are on the next floor up, and they've all been here for more than a year. My heart fell. Ian suddenly looked up toward the corner of the room. Oh no, he said. The two guys you came here with are being taken away by the guards. He turned back toward me. How did you get in here? In this room? Michael demagnetized the door, Austin said, with his electricity. Ian shook his head. That's impossible. The locks aren't magnetic. The sliding bolts are made of resin and work pneumatically. Everyone here has electrical gifts, so they've prepared for that. Ian looked back up. They're coming. Who's coming? I said. Ian didn't answer. He grabbed the girls and stepped away from the door, back to the corner of the room. If I didn't open the door, I asked, then who did? A voice boomed from an unseen speaker. That would be me, Michael. We've been expecting you. Welcome to Elgin Academy. There was suddenly a loud screech in my head, and I felt dizzy, just as I had in the parking lot when my mother was taken. I fell against the wall, covering my ears. Everyone in the room groaned except for Austin, who looked around curiously at us. What's happening? It's Nichelle, Ian said. What's a Nichelle? Austin asked. The cell door opened. The man I had seen outside the pizza parlor was standing there next to the creepy girl. Hello, Michael, the man said. I see the group has been reunited. He stepped inside the room. Shock him, Austin said. I took a step forward. Then the screeching dropped me to my knees. Everyone else screamed. Hatch turned to Austin. Austin, isn't it? I thought you were supposed to be smart. He looked down at me. What do you call yourself? The Electro Kids? The Electro Club? The Electro Clan, Austin said. Right, Hatch said darkly. You don't belong here, Austin, but here you are. I belong wherever Michael is, Austin said. Hatch smirked. Loyalty. I like that. Even when it's misplaced, there's something endearing about it. Unfortunately, this is where your relationship ends. Michael, if you'll follow me, we'll let Austin stay here with the others. Austin looked at me. I'm not leaving them, I said. An even higher pitched screeching poured through my head, followed by an increasing tightness, as if a metal band had been put around my head and cinched up. It was the same thing I had felt when my mother was taken, as if life itself were being drawn out of me through a straw. Arrgh! I fell to the ground, grabbing my temples. Stop it, Taylor shouted. Leave him alone. Mike knows how to stop it, Hatch said. Okay, I shouted, I'll go. Hatch nodded at Nichelle, and the sound and pain stopped. Come along, Mike. I'm a busy man. I staggered to my feet. My name is Michael. A glow by any other name is just as electric, but as you wish. I looked over at Austin and Taylor. They both had fear in their eyes. "I'll be back," I said. I staggered out, and the door automatically closed behind me. Halfway down the hall, Hatch turned to me and said, "I sincerely hope you won't be back to that place. I belong with my friends." "Then the question is, will your friends still be there?" "And that is completely up to you." The elevator door opened. "After you. Where are we going?" Hatch pushed a button on the elevator. "I want to talk, but first there are tests to be run." Part 4, the last part of the book. Chapter 39, Initial Findings. Later that afternoon, Hatch was in his office talking to Quentin when Dr. Parker knocked on his door. "Come in," he said gruffly. She opened the door. "Good evening, Dr. Hatch." "Quentin?" "Quentin was just leaving," Hatch said. Quentin immediately stood. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." He walked out of the office, and Hatch motioned to the same chair Quentin had occupied. "Take a seat." Before she could speak, Hatch asked, "How's our boy?" "I've never seen anyone like him." "Explain." "I've confirmed your initial findings. His L waves are extremely high, except they've grown since your first encounter." "So he is becoming more powerful," Hatch said. "So it would appear. But even more curious is that he seems to handle electricity differently than the others." Hatch slightly leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "His electricity seems to be circulating within his body, either through his bone marrow or central nervous system, which may account for some rather surprising phenomena. I administered a mild shock to him to see how he'd respond, and his L waves actually increased by 1%. I was so intrigued by this result that I upped the power to nearly 500 joules. At that level, I thought he'd probably jump out of his seat, but instead, he just sat there. His body told a different story, however. His L waves spiked 50%, then dropped and maintained at an increased 17%, and held there until the end of our examination. He still might be elevated." Hatch leaned forward in his chair. "You're saying he can absorb electricity from other sources?" "It would appear so." "Like Nichelle?" "Except that Nichelle doesn't retain power. She's simply a conduit to its dissemination. Faye seems to capture it." Hatch rubbed his chin in fascination. "How is hoarding all that electricity affecting his health?" "If it's hurting him, it's not manifesting. He's perfectly healthy, with the exception of his Tourette's syndrome." "He has Tourette's?" "Yes, that's why he has the facial tics." "I thought he was just anxious." Hatch rubbed his palms together the way he always did when he was excited. Could his Tourette's have something to do with why he's different than the other children?" "I don't know. We don't even know enough about Tourette's to know what causes it. We know it's a neurological disorder, but not a whole lot more than that." "But it's possible?" "It's possible. I want this information kept in strictest confidentiality." "Of course, all research is confidential. I don't even want your assistants to know. This is between you and me." "Very well. If he'll cooperate, Mr. Bay could be the model of the Glows 2.0. And if he won't, then we'll have to fix that." "How was his attitude?" "He was quite defiant." "Of that I'm sure. But there's one thing I'm equally certain of." "What's that?" "The boy loves his mother." All right, guys, the next chapter is really long, so we'll go ahead and stop here for today. Until next time.